Hello world, welcome back once again. Thank you for being with us. A day with a podcast is always a good day. So we appreciate you welcoming us into your home, into your car. Maybe you're working out, taking a walk, and you're listening to the pod. Thank you so much. Please, if you're on YouTube, please subscribe and click on the notification bell. If you are listening to Apple Music, Spotify, and all the rest, please leave us a review there and a comment and share the content. You are helping us to grow. Shout out to everybody who's sending us feedback and messages. We love you and we appreciate you. I've got amazing guests who's back for the second time. Sometimes you have a conversation with somebody, and you're like, no, man. Yeah, no, we have to go deeper. We have to go deeper, Papa. And this is it. And ladies and gentlemen, Nobuntu Hlazo-Webster is back. Nobuntu is the deputy leader of BOSA, an author. She's a mom, she's a wife, she is a social activist and entrepreneur, and now a key leader in South Africa's political landscape as well. And we are so honored to be talking to her once again. Sis Nobs.
Hey.
Thank you so much for being here once again.
Glad to be here.
Yeah,
such an amazing time. I'm glad to be here. I had such an amazing time, a lot of time.
Yeah.
Excited to be invited back.
Yeah.
As someone who sometimes preaches,
Yeah.
you always you speak somewhere or you're invited and you're a guest somewhere and you leave knowing that they're gonna call.
No way.
Yes.
Awesome stuff. How are you doing? Is it getting better or worse in terms of being busy?
I'm getting better. So
nice. I like that.
I'm getting better. So I'm getting better at managing my life. I'm getting better at incorporating all the different aspects of what I do.
Teach me your ways. Teach me.
I also do have incredible help.
Yeah.
I have my executive assistant who is literally my right hand.
She runs your life.
Runs my life.
Yes.
And her and I are getting better at
Awesome.
and managing everything. So
Beautiful. Awesome stuff. South Africa is at a very interesting time, and I really want to pick your brain a lot on national building issues in our time as well. Very interesting, very difficult times. The globe in general, but also in South Africa, we need to get our act together fast, or dare I say, we are going to be like a Zimbabwe. When you are alone, maybe before you close your eyes at night, what are some of the key things about our country that just make you restless?
Youth unemployment.
Hey.
I can tell you that for sure is at the top of what keeps me up at night.
Yeah.
By the expanded definition, we have over 60% youth unemployment in this country.
Those numbers are crazy.
Those numbers are crazy, and they keep me up at night for a number of things. They keep me up at night because the psyche of a nation is really important. So when you have young people that are not working, what is the psyche of young people? What are you doing to the psyche of young people? What are you doing to the psyche of young people in a continent that is the youngest continent and has a majority of young people, more than anything, more than any other group, age group in the population. So it keeps me up at night because of that. It keeps me up at night because of what that means for the economy. What it means about our very near future as a country. It keeps me up at night because I'm somebody who's all about entrepreneurship. And I worry that if we're not able to get these young people to start thinking about entrepreneurship, to start thinking in an entrepreneurial way, innovative way, I fear for the direction that we're going in as a country. So it keeps me up at night. I got into business as a young person. I was 23, 24 when I started my first business. And a big part of the reason I got into business was so I could create opportunity and employment for other people and other young people, but also so that I could hopefully inspire and mentor other young people to be able to start their own businesses. I believe in ownership.
Yeah.
I believe so much in ownership. I believe, you talk about triple BEE, and for me it is a flawed policy.
All right.
Because it does not give ownership into the hands of especially black people. It does not transfer ownership at the pace it should be, and to the extent that it should in this country. So I worry about youth unemployment because for me it means people are probably discouraged. Young people are probably discouraged. I worry about it because it means our economy is not likely to grow at the pace it should. And most importantly, I worry about it because I think couldn't these young people be creating work?
Right.
And how do we get them to be thinking about it?
Yes. You were recently home. We are as we are shooting. It's still June. You went home to Durban, and there was a whole event and run a boss side. I could see from your post that the next generation is really close to your heart. How was that experience for you to make contact with the children, the young people, and to talk to them? What were some of your observations as well as you were dealing with young people?
My observations is that we're brilliant young people.
Yeah.
We have brilliant South Africans.
Sure.
We have brilliant thinking. We have actually just brilliant. They have brilliant spirits.
Yeah.
We have. I don't think we give young people enough space to contribute to the discourse in this country. I don't think we give young people enough space to contribute to even some of the solutions we're trying to shape for this country. That really more than anything, what I came up with is this is it.
Wow.
This is actually, I always say nobody's coming to save us, we're the ones we've been waiting for, but I think a lot of that sits with young people. They are it. Young people are actually, if we bothered to spend time with them, if we bothered to give young people a seat at the table, we would be well on our way to really turning things around.
Sure. And we're not doing so well with that as a nation, and that's not to point the finger at any one specific or any group specifically, because it's everyone's responsibility. Number one, these young people are being produced or come from broken families. That's another issue. The church is not doing effective programs to develop young people. Political parties are trying to have a youth league here, this and that year youth, but is it really working? Unemployment cuts young off at the knees. What can we do to develop young people right? And another big problem is education in the country. We are disadvantaging young people as well. What are some of the things we can do? It's very hard to put that in one sentence, but what are some of your thoughts, Senzijan, about young people?
We need to go back to who we are. Because I think so much is lost because we've simply moved away from who we are. Part of who we are is Nobuntu. So we need to go back, first of all, to being in community. And being community. This highly individualistic culture that's starting to grow amongst us as Africans, as South Africans. That's not who we are.
It's very disturbing.
It's very disturbing. So we need to go back to Nobuntu. We need to go back to incorporating everybody in society into whatever it is that we're doing. Right now, we live in this kind of silos. We live in silos. These ones are doing what they think needs to be done. These ones are doing what we can't.
It's us versus them.
Us versus them as well. We really can't hope to change things around when we're living in an individualistic kind of society.
Can't work.
We also need to go back to Ubuntu because we have this idea that as long as we're okay, as long as I'm okay, as long as me and my family are okay, it's fine. As long as That's genuinely where the middle class is at, particularly the black middle class. You know, you listen to people and even just their apathy and their lack of involvement in things. It's because people just care about them being okay and the people most closest to them being okay. What that will do is we'll spend time where we have skills to share, where we have wisdom to share, where we have resources to share. We'll spend more time giving that and sharing that with young people. You know, we'll spend more time, we talk about the church, looking outside of our own agenda as a church. Because, you know, the thing about churches or church institutions is that they've become so inwardly focused about what their agenda is and less about how do we use what we have in the form of people, in the form of resources. Usually there's a building. How do we use this to start to contribute to, for instance, skills development for young people? How do we lend what we have to work that young people could be doing, to entrepreneurship for young people? And I was, maybe like 6-7 years ago, I spoke at a conference called Nobuntu People, and literally my topic was around the church and economic development. How do churches get involved in helping? I mean, so, horrible example. Last year, you talk about leaving home recently. Last year there were floods in Durban. And I remember being Guamash with a friend's organization, just working there, making sure people are okay, making sure people are fed, they have clothes and food. And I remember we went from, there were a couple of venues that were holding people that had been displaced, of which to this day there are people still living in those venues. It's mostly community halls. There are still people living in community halls post last year's floods.
Wow.
So
months later.
Months later. So the floods were in April.
Over a year.
2022. So I remember thinking as we drove around going from hall to hall, and every time we'd pass a couple of churches before we get to the one community hall, we'd pass a number of churches. And I remember thinking, and this was in the early, you know, part of it, you know, just an immediate response to it. First responder type of moment. None of the churches were open to people.
My goodness.
None of them. None of them. I do understand that later, you know, a couple of weeks later, the other churches are starting to open up to do collections, to hand out food. But in that moment of first responder, there's a crisis right now. Churches, and I say this having seen it with my own eyes, the churches were shut closed. They were shut closed. And so for me, that's why I'm saying we've lost Ubuntu. And actually, Ubuntu is also a spiritual or a scriptural concept.
That's right.
In the book of Acts, you could not be okay when the other couldn't be okay, because we saw in the book of Acts, the first church, that all shared their belongings amongst each other.
There was no rich or poor. You couldn't see the difference.
They shared everything that they had, and that's how they lived. But and that's Ubuntu. I can't be okay when you're not okay. When your dignity is trampled upon, my dignity is trampled upon. When you're in need, it means I'm in.
It means something.
And so I've got to share what I have. We have lost that. And so until we go back to the concept of when we're never going to care about making sure that we find a way to meet young people where they're at, to help young people, to hear young people, to engage young people.
I hear you. As we talk about young people, and you are
a young person.
A young person as well. Yes. No, I was gonna say a leader.
Look, in the political scheme of things in Africa, as somebody, I was on another interview yesterday, and somebody said, because you mean you're young and all that. I'm like, no, I'm not. She's like, well, look, in the scheme of things, you are definitely. In the political
when we look at the average age
of not only of our own parliament, but of African leaders.
Very young. Young people might feel disillusioned with politics and the political system and leadership as a whole. And in our country, we're going over to the elections next year, the national elections. Why should someone who's a youth and can vote, why should they go to the polling station? They feel that my leaders have not done anything for me. I've got a degree, 4-year degree, but I'm sitting at home, I'm not working. I don't have clean water. I stay in Hammanskraal, Siakula. Why should I even vote? What's your word to young people about political involvement or awareness?
You know, yes, you should vote. You absolutely should vote, but you should also get involved.
Okay.
Because no one is coming to save us.
That's a big thing we need to get, right? As South Africans in general.
No one is coming to save us. Let me tell you, so at BOSA, our whole ethos is around a citizen-led movement.
Right.
A citizen-led dispensation.
Yes.
This is what we're about.
Sure.
And I can tell you now that it's interesting how introducing that concept to people is not always easy. Because South Africans and Africans in general have this Messiah mentality.
Yeah.
And it's that Messiah mentality that's gotten us to where we are. Because when you give people that much power, that's when you take power away from yourself. Because we're the ones who have power. We're the ones who have power.
We're waiting for another Mandela. That's what we're waiting for.
We're waiting. We're waiting for another Mandela. And the truth of the matter is, Mandela was a phenomenal leader. A phenomenal leader. But he didn't do that by himself.
Yes.
South Africans at some point decided this is enough. South Africans were part of movements that overturned the system of the day. He is the symbol of that, and he's the face of that. And I think, you know, those kinds of things sometimes are damaging. You know, that type of precedence is to an extent damaging, because then we have this Messiah mentality, we have big man politics is what it's called. That there's this big man, it's always a man.
Never a big woman.
There's this big man coming to save us. There's no big man coming to save us. We're the ones, the power is in our own hands. And so that's why it is important to vote, because that's your power. But it's only just one of the ways that is your power.
Sure.
You have power in so many other ways. There's so many ways to participate in democracy.
Sure.
There's ways to participate in what is happening in parliament. There's ways to participate with a political party that is engaging and does care about what people are saying. There are ways to participate with papers that go to the public for comment and for contribution. There's petitions. You know, there are so many ways to participate in what is happening. There's also ways to participate through civil society movements and organizations. There are many ways to participate in your country and in your democracy. And so that's why you've got to vote. Because actually, if you just sit, yes, I understand, politics and politicians have let us down. Absolutely. But we're the ones who put them there.
We did.
We're the ones who put them there. And there's this thing that's said, and people always get sensitive about this, is that you get the leaders you deserve, but you do.
That's true.
Because you're the ones who put them there. And so you do have power. Your power is in putting the right representatives in office that are who you believe what we need, and the power is in getting involved in the process.
True. Because my observation, I don't know the exact stats, but the youth voting bloc is huge.
The youth voting bloc, so the current unregistered youth comes up to about 14 million. That number could today, in the next elections, take out the ANC.
Wow.
Just them.
Just born.
They could take out the ANC from being the majority rule party in this country.
It seems like our leaders only listen and respond to burning libraries and schools. Getting involved and the platforms for engagement, they're not responsive to that.
That's true.
They want burning tires in the street. They want Twitter to trend with them.
That's true.
And it's like, okay, here are the set channels and ways of doing things. And peaceful activism. But these people are only responding when there's smoke in the street.
When there's smoke in the street. That's true. And that's unfortunate. But the other side of it is that's not the way.
That's not the way, Because
we then take away from the little that we do have. right?
Yeah.
It's back to that thing of Ubuntu is when I do that, am I thinking about, fine, maybe I'm now out of school, maybe I'm now 2021 and I don't need the library. But am I thinking about the 14-year-old
Yes.
who still needs the library?
The next generation.
You know? It's that thing of Ubuntu and of thinking about others as well. Yes, you have a pressing need right now, but so does somebody else.
Absolutely.
You know, and you can't be the person who is trampling on their rights and on their need. So it does seem like that's how they respond currently. And I can tell you now, guys, I got into politics as an entrepreneur, as somebody who's been an entrepreneur, as somebody who's been a leader in business and in civil society. I got involved because I knew that the current leadership isn't responsive. They're not going to take us where we need to go. And so my response was, I can't wait for somebody to come and then take up that responsibility. I don't know, who am I waiting for? It's got to be me, right?
Sure.
And so when we realize that these people aren't responsive, our response has to also put responsibility on ourselves. Right. And so our response can't be to burn a library because I'm then taking away responsibility for myself to build. Whatever my response is, I've got to carry a responsibility with it.
I must be part of the solution.
I must be part of the solution. If they won't listen, I mean, right now we've still got another year with them.
Yeah.
If they won't listen, what can I do to change this? Who can I gather? What are the solutions we can come up with as a community for ourselves?
That's critical.
Because for now, they won't. And it comes back to that thing of nobody's coming to save us. It is just, that's the reality. And until we will get other leaders in power, I know that. 2024, we will get other leaders into government, and they will hopefully use resources better. I can tell you now that my commitment, where I am, my political party, we will use resources towards the betterment of our own constituencies, of this country, of our communities. But until then, use what you have, work with what you have, work with your own community, and start fixing the issues in your own community.
Are you not concerned about how fragmented the opposition political landscape is? There's so many small new parties, new formations. Would opposition politics not be more effective in South Africa if there was more unification? Or are we really inevitably looking at a coalition situation?
We are inevitably looking at a coalition situation. That definitely is it.
Which is unstable.
Currently.
We are not good at it in South Africa currently.
So, as Bossa, we are very clear that we want to be part of a coalition, we want to lead a coalition, and we are committed to developing our own muscle to be able to work in and lead coalitions and be a part of a significant coalition. That's really where we're at, because we know it's a reality. But we also believe it's democracy. It's an expression of democracy. So you talk about the fragmentation of the opposition vote. The truth is that in South Africa, we have lived with one-party rule, really. We've lived with a majority, one-party majority, for a long time. And our own definition and experience of democracy is not true democracy.
I hear you.
That's not real democracy. That's not a representation of the diversity of thinking, of ideas that this country has. So we are so used to the fact, like, we treat politics like it's a soccer match. Qembu Kaizer Chiefs, Qembu Pirates, my one must win. And our allegiance is on the basis of loyalty. We love Pirates and Kulelegi Pirates. And I always give this example. I was raised in an Orlando Pirates home. And really. We were all Orlando Pirates.
Yes, automatically.
Automatically, you inherit it, and that's what it is. Happy people, up the backs forever. You wear black and white, and you become this person with pirates.
Yeah. So in South Africa, we say, my father was in the struggle, my uncle was in
That's
exile.
it. My father's in exile. You grew up with the songs. You grew up with the nostalgia. You have an affinity to this thing, and that's what it's about. And then you have we must win. So our whole thing is it's more about your team winning than it is about moving South Africa forward. That's really our experience of democracy. But actually, what democracy is about the fact that you have agency. It's about the fact that you are represented, that your voice is represented. It is about the power of the people to govern. It is about you choosing people who represent what you're about. So for me, that's what a diversity of political parties does. And that's what it gives you. It gives you true democracy.
Yes.
Can coalitions work? Yes, coalitions can work. They haven't worked in South Africa. What you actually need is you need a reasonable, sober. You need a reasonable, sober player in the room. That is really just about making the thing work. That is about making sure that there is a cohesion. The current coalitions that we have are really just even the foundation upon which they're based. The agreements are about, you'll take this position. We'll take that position. It's about positions. It's actually not about issues. It's not about saying, okay, you're good at health.
Yes.
You take the health portfolio.
Because you're good at it.
You're good at it. You've got expertise in this. You've done a lot of work on this. You take the health portfolio. You take the education portfolio. You take the housing portfolio. It's not about that. And that's what needs to change. The engagement needs to be about that. So will there be fragmentation? Yes. Will it be easy? No. Will it be messy? Yeah. I don't think it's something that overnight is suddenly perfect and works perfectly. But what I can tell you is that we're committed now to building our coalition muscle. We're committed to partnering, even whether it's with a bigger party, a smaller party, a collective of parties. We are committed to working as a collective and being the sober voice in the room and leading the process of what it looks like to put together an agreement that works.
I get you. It's been said that 2024 is the next 1994. Is that an exaggeration? Is that advisable to think about the elections like that? What do you think of that statement when you hear it?
I think it is important to think about it like that because I don't believe South Africa has more than one election in it to turn things around. So basically, if we carried on with the current status quo post 2024, by 2029, we may not have anything to fight for.
My goodness.
So it is that critical. I think that we're a resilient people. And so because of that, sometimes the impact of what we've experienced, the impact of the poverty in this country, the number of people that live below the poverty line in this country is too high. More than half of the black population live below the poverty line. That's not normal. We have schools and an education system that is not setting up young people to be able to make it in the world. And actually, we spoke about youth unemployment, and that's a part of it, right? We have a healthcare system that we saw couldn't carry a crisis. We saw that in COVID. But we also have a healthcare system that can't carry normal healthcare issues.
Daily
healthcare issues. I myself have a nephew who is currently lying in hospital and has been for weeks because of something actually, it's all got to do with the system. So he has a one-room in Togoza, and it was load shedding. So during load shedding, he then put his shirt on the. His shirt was somewhere close to the stove, right?
Man.
So he's before load shedding. Sorry, there's a shirt or something that's close to the stove. He's cooking. Load shedding happens, goes off. It's at night when load shedding happens. It goes off. He goes to sleep. During the course of the night, power is restored, and whatever was next to his stove was set alight. So you see, first of all, there's a housing issue, right? So his place, he lives in a one-room shack, right? So housing. 2, energy. Lights went off, unscheduled even, and then they came back unscheduled.
Sure.
In that time, he's asleep by then. There's a garment close to his stove, and it caught lights. His shack burnt.
Oh, man.
And because of spatial planning and because of the housing issue, the emergency fire services didn't get to him. I don't even know if they ever got to him, right? He's in a part of society where it means that he's on the outskirts of where that service is.
Sure.
He then, his shack burns down, loses everything. He's taken to hospital. He didn't get assistance at hospital on time, right? He's been in a coma now for a couple of weeks, but it was because essentially, when you hear what the doctors are saying, without getting technical and medical, he didn't get attention on time when he went to a public hospital.
My goodness.
So housing, emergency services, energy, healthcare.
Infrastructure. Everything just came together in a perfect storm. Nothing is fragmented. It's all interlinked.
Everything's interlinked. So this is where we are now. Carry on the same way we have been for another 5 years.
No.
There'll be nothing. So that's why it is so critical. And that is why next year is so critical for young people. We saw young people turn around Lesotho.
Yeah.
They turned around the vote in Lesotho. So in the last Lesotho elections, which were last year, somebody who was new to politics actually became the president.
Yeah.
And what he got was the youth vote. It was the youth vote who was able to to turn that around.
Sure.
And in this country, the young people, just by sheer numbers of unregistered young people, have the potential to do that.
That's something sobering to think about.
Yeah.
Yeah. Within BOSA, what are the platforms that are there for women and young people to get active in and to participate in the system? What do you have?
So we have something called the Young Builders Movement.
Okay.
And we have chapters at the various universities. We have at UJ, we have it here in Johannesburg, we have at UJ, we have at Wits, we have at TUT.
Sure.
And we're starting one slowly in UKZN, and we have one at UCT.
Sure.
And we're starting to build the chapters in the universities. I often say, though, while we have those youth chapters, and it's important for a representation of the youth voice, it's also as important to have the voice of young people in the mainstream of the organization.
Yeah.
So we have young people in our exco.
Nice.
We have our UCT provincial leader is a young person. She also happens to be a woman. So we also have young people in the work that we're doing, and their voices in policy.
Good.
And in everything else that we're doing. Same goes for women.
Yeah.
I was reluctant to start a women's chapter or women's forum at BOSA when we started. We will be launching one soon.
Right.
But I was reluctant to start that because every time I went around the country, young women would say, "Hey, Stella Women's, Stella, please, where is the women's?" And I was like, "No, I want you involved in the mainstream of the organization first. Because then what happens is then you have this women's thing and then you have the main thing, and women are all in the women's thing, and then it's separated. But you want women involved in the mainstream of the organization, properly represented in the mainstream of the organization. So I've intentionally delayed that.
Sure,
because
sure.
I didn't want us to become a place where we feel, okay, here's where our voices and that's where we end. I wanted to make sure young people and women are involved in the mainstream of the party. So we will be launching a women's movement, but for me, the critical and primary thing is for young people and women to be involved in the core of the party and in the core of what we do.
Okay. I didn't want to make this all about politics, sorry.
Look,
we have,
it's important because there aren't many women in politics.
Yeah.
And when you talk about Women's Month that's coming, when you talk about issues of women leadership, it's important to have women who are in the space speak about that. One of the biggest, somebody asked me in an interview, what has been the biggest surprise for you having gone into politics? The biggest surprise for me has been how little women are represented. And you see, it is deceiving because we have a parliament with over 40% women representation. So then it looks like we're represented. But those women are proxy to men and their agendas, and they are not they are not women who are given the space to be independent thinkers and independent leaders. They're actually just there, many of them in the other organizations, and it is just you see it in the space. It is when I go and I'm involved because I'm at the level that I'm at, which is very senior. When I get involved and I'm in spaces where there's other parties and that type of thing in the leadership, there I'm always the only woman or one of two women, which tells you the real story. And so the environment itself, there are women are few, and it's not inviting, and it's not, when you're there, you feel that you're different, you feel that you have to prove yourself, you feel like you feel it in those spaces with all these other political leaders. So it's important. I'm glad we've had the conversation because they just aren't spaces.
Maybe my last two questions on this, whole theme of nation building. It's our power crisis. I want your thoughts on that, but also on corruption. Corruption is so deeply embedded in our culture and society, and it's going to take more than just a commission to deal with it. But what are and I'm reading Andre de Ruyter's book. I've got my own thoughts on him as a leader and the book as in general, but what I've gained from his narration of things is to learn how deeply corruption is embedded in South African politics, but society as a whole. It's so cultural. It's another story. It's crazy, and of course that has produced our power crisis. There's no way you can separate the two. What is Busa's plan or solutions for the power issue and just getting rid of corruption?
Yeah, I mean, I'll talk to you about our plan for the power issue, which is, first of all, you can't have the conversation without talking about alternative energy. So we do need to start building capacity of alternative energy. And, our plan is around nuclear reactors. Because they can power up especially essential services to begin with in this country. We have been involved and led a court action where we actually took government and Eskom to court. And court ruled in our favor.
Yes, well done on that victory.
Yeah, and that was to say that they have to make sure that police stations, schools, and public healthcare facilities, hospitals and clinics have alternative energy and are able to have uninterrupted supply.
And then the ruling party appeals that. I don't know.
They appeal it. They appeal it. And then the ruling party appeals that. And for me, that's about political will. It is about political will. They appeal it on an argument that it would interrupt the capacity of the grid. And the ruling says supply energy. It didn't say it has to be coal generated.
Just supply
energy.
It
said supply energy. Make sure that there's an uninterrupted supply. Why would you not want to make that happen? Why would you not want to explore ways to make that happen. Why would, even in your communication, you not say that, well, here's what we'd like, here's what we've explored, here's what we'd like to do, but, here's where we'd land it. It should just appeal it and say it's not possible. So it's the issue of political will when it comes to it. And, you speak about corruption, and really and truly speaking, you cannot expect something different from an organization that has failed to hold people to account, even when they have been found guilty of corruption. How many people have been arrested post that commission?
Very few. It's investigation.
So the truth of the matter is that there are so many instances, even in other provinces, where people have been found guilty of corruption, where people have been in commissions, even in their own internal commissions and all that, but they never held to account. So when people, when an organization fails to hold people to account, even in their own organization for corruption, then nothing's going to change. There's nothing that's going to change. You really, when it comes to corruption, we could sit here and talk about technically, how do you root out corruption, right? Sure. But the truth of the matter is that how you root out corruption is by having non-corrupt leaders.
Simple.
That's literally how you do it. So we can sit and talk about the technicalities and talk about the fact that you need to digitize procurement systems and all of that, which will be great, but you need the political will for it. So the first thing that you need is to have non-corrupt leaders, period.
It's not rocket science.
It's not rocket science. That's what you need.
Exactly. I hear you. I want to talk to you about leadership, just generally now. What are some of the leadership lessons you've learned in your new journey, and how have you seen leadership differently now? You've always been a leader, even from just childhood and your teenagehood, young years. You were an entrepreneur, you ran businesses. But what are the areas that have sort of grown in you as a leader, or things that you've realized, wow, leadership was not this, it's actually this?
Sure. Courage.
Yeah.
Leadership is courage.
Yeah.
So that's definitely something I've learned about leadership, is that it's courage. It is courage. First of all, we're doing something different. Part of what we're doing is we're getting communities, for instance, to nominate their own leaders, versus us having some sort of party structures that nominate leaders for candidacy for the elections. We're saying to communities, you choose your own leaders. And that takes courage. It's going against the grain. So many things take courage. I've had to dig very deep into myself for courage. It takes courage to go out into a really contested space. And the space is contested in every way. It's contested politically, it's contested economically, it's contested spiritually, it's contested. And that takes courage. So going into a space that is so contested takes courage. Going into a space that's so public, where everything that your work is public, it takes courage. Doing things differently. So I speak about doing things differently in that we're asking communities to choose their own leaders, but also because we're citizen-led, just in our whole approach. I've had to learn the courage to, even in our own space, say, I think this is how we should do things. And it's not the same. It's not typically how politics work, but that's how we should do things. We should be starting to create the solutions in communities versus making promises.
I get you.
That's different. So that takes courage.
Sure.
It's putting yourself out there, and it's doing something. When you do stuff in a way it's never been done before, there's a risk involved, and you have to be courageous about that and believe in that. So that's one of the things that has been a huge learning. Sure. Another one is around power. So I've had to redefine power.
Okay.
Because growing up, you learn about power, but your pictures of power. So, I mean, if I asked you now, what's your picture of power? When I say power, what do you picture? What comes to your mind? Chances are, maybe you'll think of a dictator. Chances are, maybe you'll think of a wealthy man.
Yeah.
You know, there's just so many definitions and pictures we have of power that are actually disruptive and destructive, actually. So destructive, sorry, not disruptive. And so for me, it has been about redefining and embracing the need, what we're doing, because politics is about gaining and using power, you know, so it's about redefining power to say power is actually a mandate from people. Power is a mandate from people.
Not control over them.
In this context. Power is a mandate from people in this context. And actually, it should probably be a definition of power in every context.
Wow.
It is a mandate. It is a mandate from people, not control of people. I've had to redefine power because the reason we have these destructive pictures of power and references of power is because power has not been used in a way that is constructive. For the most part. I've had to redefine power because the picture of it is very masculine. And I've had to get to a place, where I define for myself what is feminine leadership.
I just had to check myself because when you said, what do I think of power? I imagined what I imagined, but then the face was a man.
Always.
So right now I'm checking myself. Whoa.
Always.
So why is this your first go-to?
Always, because that's how we define power. And I've had to then ask myself, what is feminine leadership? What is feminine power? And how does it show up? And what I've found is that, because then I think back to our grandmothers and the power they had, but it's a power that's undermined and that's not seen as a power. Then I think back to our mothers. Then I think back to history and moments where women have had power, but it's not seen in the traditional sense as power, because we've defined power as that destructive form of power. And I've had to then redefine what power is for myself, but I've had to define what feminine leadership and feminine power is. And it's collaborative. It's engaging. It's relational. It is all those things. It's progressive. It is Ubuntu. It is for the collective. It's all those things. And that has been a huge leadership lesson.
Wow.
It's been a huge leadership. It has taught me to be comfortable with the idea of power, but to redefine what it is. For me.
I'm greatly challenged right now in my life where I have been mandated to do things that go against the grain, that make me an anomaly in the space of ministry, to say things and ask questions that are very uncomfortable. It's been so challenging because it's a complete paradigm shift to what I was trained to, what I'm thinking about. How do I become comfortable in that discomfort? Because it will never get comfortable. I'm called for discomfort. I'm called for problems. I'm called for problems.
You are. I watch some of the stuff that you do, and I'm like,
I'm not called for peace.
I'm like, no. You come in peace, but you mean business.
You know what I'm saying?
Type thing.
You
must trust yourself, and that's part of the leadership lessons that I've learned.
Right.
You have to trust yourself. You have to trust that this against the grain thing that you're doing is the truth. That this against the grain thing that you're saying is the truth. That this against the grain thing that you're doing is the future
Sure.
also.
Sure.
Like it's what is needed right now. You have to trust that voice. And that's a lot of inner work.
Yeah.
It's a lot of inner work
Yeah.
because, when you have to trust yourself, you have to believe that you are worthy of having a voice in the room.
Yes. Yes.
And you have to believe in your own power, for starters. You have to believe that you have something unique that you bring to the table.
Sure.
And that it is a necessary power right now.
Right.
This thing of, it is part of the whole world that we've been socialized into, where everyone has to be the same. Man.
No.
So every time you're different, it makes you feel uncomfortable. There's a dissonance.
Yes.
It almost makes you feel inferior because you're different.
Yeah.
But the difference is what is needed.
Sure.
That difference is exactly what is needed.
Sure.
So it's about trusting. It's about trusting yourself, about trusting your gift, about trusting what you're called to, and about trusting the power of what you bring and what you have. And that's what I've had. I've a big part of the leadership lesson that I've had to learn. And trusting your instincts. Oh man.
Yeah.
I was saying somewhere that. Actually, it was an interview yesterday. I was saying, I shared this, and it's a very vulnerable thing to share.
Yeah.
But this that I'm doing now, I'm good at a lot of things.
Sure.
That's why I say this is a vulnerable thing to say, because somebody else might read it as
yeah.
But I am good at a lot of things. I've done a lot of things, and that proves it, right? I've been in media, I've been in business, I've been in economic development. These are different things that I'm good at and that I can do. But nothing has felt quite as natural as the political space.
No way.
I promise you.
I thought you were going to say the opposite.
It feels so instinctive and so natural. Doesn't mean it's not hard. Doesn't mean I don't have things to learn every single day. I do, but it feels so instinctive for me. It feels like I'm right at home, even with the hard stuff.
Yeah.
Even with the with the hardships and the challenges that one faces, even with the fights that you have to fight, it all still feels natural.
Sure.
And so you have to trust your instincts.
Sure.
You have to trust your instincts. So people talk about, and this is the more vulnerable part, really putting myself out there. People talk about what their superpower is.
Yes.
Right? You often get asked, what's your superpower?
Yes.
My superpower is my instinct.
Ooh.
My instinct is never wrong.
Powerful.
It's never been wrong.
Yeah.
It's a divine thing, though.
I was about to say, it's a very spiritual thing.
Very spiritual
It's not
thing.
just fluffy and,
No.
that I get you. It's a Holy Spirit led thing.
It's a very, very spiritual thing.
Yeah.
And so that's why I suppose I say it comes naturally to me, because I'm led by that divine
Spirit,
instinct. I'm led by the Spirit.
Yeah.
And so I can never, it's a kind of space where I can't now, as lazy as I could have been in my past life, sometimes with prayer and with, my own spiritual life, I can't do that now. Because I literally depend on my divine instinct. I depend on it every day. It's all I've got. And it's a good place to be in, because I'm not dependent on myself.
Yeah.
I'm dependent on a superpower that I can't even make it.
Yes.
I can't manufacture it. I can't make it happen. I'm dependent on a divine instinct. And I promise you, if I were to say anything to anyone, I would say it's good to be uncomfortable, because you stop relying on yourself and you rely on something so much bigger. I rely on God fully. Because I'm uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I'm desperate for God.
Yes.
Every day.
Yes.
Because I'm uncomfortable.
On a choice.
I'm not choice. It's bigger than
Yes.
the whole thing.
Yes.
There's a friend of ours who when like we come into a braai or a party and Segumnand, he always goes, it's bigger than all of us. So literally, it's bigger than me. And so because it's bigger than me, I have no choice.
True.
But to rely on God. And, that trust thing has been to come into the space and comfortably be a kingdom kid.
Yes.
And comfortably be a child of God.
Yeah.
Comfortably be that. It's who I am.
Get you.
I mean, I said in the last time I was here, I can't go anywhere without that.
Yeah.
I can't show up as anything outside of that. I am a child of the kingdom. I carry a kingdom mandate. I'm led divinely.
It's not a garment you put on and take off.
No, and it can't be. I've always got to come in with that.
Sure.
And it's been learning to trust that.
Sure.
And learning that, yes, I may be smart. Yes, I may have a leadership gift.
Yeah.
Yes, all of this. Yes, I may be able to speak in public. But honestly, truly, the only thing that really, really, really drives what I'm doing now and what I have, and the only reason I'm here is because there's a divine mandate and a divine instinct that I have, and to own that, and to carry it and to trust it.
I get you. How, for instance, swimming against the current is tiring, exhausting on all levels, physically, mentally, spiritually. How do we energize those of us who are moving against the grain? How do we energize, re-energize, replenish, refuel? Refuel that courage, because it's a muscle that can get tired. Courage, we've got tanks, emotional tanks that get depleted. Every interview I have, every conversation I have requires a different set of emotions for me to kick into. Everything that I research before a talk as well, and it gets tiring. It gets tiring to be misunderstood. Social media is good for feedback and marketing, but you realize how much you get misunderstood. It gets tiring to explain yourself. It gets tiring to fight for the right thing. How do we re-energize and keep, because we need to show up in our fullness in every situation?
It's going to sound oversimplistic and really not bombastic.
Yeah.
But rest. We live in a society that has taught us to strive. It's taught us to strive, to always be striving, to always be striving.
Yeah. Hustling, team no sleep.
But I'm a firm believer in God's word and in the notion that it's not by power or by might, but by God's Spirit that we're able to do things.
Sure.
And so when I say rest, I'm not even talking about just stopping and taking a holiday or leave or time out. Yeah. I'm talking about a posture of rest. I'm talking about every day working from a place of rest and not striving. I'm talking about every day working from a place of not having to prove yourself.
My goodness.
Because who you are in Christ and who God is already proven. And so you work from a place of rest because you believe that it's already done. It's already done. It's already accomplished. Mine is to show up. I believe in that so much, And what has helped me to be in a posture of rest, because it's the posture. To be in a posture of rest has been being very prayerful, investing in my time in prayer.
Right.
Because I believe that for me, what then happens is that in that time of prayer, I replenish, first of all. But secondly, in that time of prayer, I already attain things. I attain them. So in prayer, I've already attained what I need to attain. In prayer, I've already pushed against the grain. I've already pushed even against whatever might be coming back at me, like you say. In prayer, I've already pushed against those things. And so all that's then needed is for me to show up.
Oh, come on.
Then you just need to show up.
Yeah.
So for me, that's how I replenish. I replenish in assuming a posture of rest, and that comes from being prayerful and spending time in prayer. And I always say, in the kairos, ours is to show up.
Sure.
And in the kairos is when things are aligned.
Sure.
You know, I've aligned with things in the spiritual
Sure.
realm. I've aligned with things in the spirit, and then I show up.
Sure.
People, one of the mistakes we've made is really to deconstruct who we are and separate who we are. We've separated the spiritual so much and almost feel like we have to explain ourselves even when we tap into the spiritual.
Sure.
It is who we are.
Yeah.
Like it's everything else
Sure.
is a expression of that.
Yeah.
Primarily, we are in the spiritual.
Yeah.
And so, for me, it is being in that space consistently, showing up from a place of my spirituality before anything else.
I get you.
And people can call it over spiritual, they can call it what they like.
No.
They call it what they like.
Yeah.
I know the truth of that's what everything is.
Sure.
That's what everything is.
Sure.
Whatever you see in the physical is just now a
I get you.
manifestation.
Awesome. I want to off-ramp a little bit, talk about relationships. And you talk a lot about the people in your life, even your writings. You highlight the importance of relationships. On the macro level of that, we can talk about collaboration and partnerships. On the micro level, we can talk about companionship and fellowship with that. And one of the words that the Lord gave me when I came into the year in January, he says, he gave me 2 resolutions, if I can call me the New Year's resolutions. Work on yourself, be the man, don't set goals, but be the man and the person that can do these things. And secondly, he says, don't fumble people. And I knew you were talking about relationships. How important have relationships been in your life on any level? And how do you make it work? How do we invest positively into significant relationships? Not just relationships because we want to have somebody around and it's nice to socialize. What have relationships meant for you? How have you nurtured them?
One of my favorite topics.
What's up? We're closing on a good note.
Because my wealth is my people.
Yes, right?
I want to cry when I talk about this.
Come on. Yes.
I have such incredible people around me.
Yeah.
I have such incredible people in my corner. I spoke earlier, and it's awkward because she's here, but I spoke earlier about my assistant.
Yes.
And she, when I've been having a hard week, difficult week, literally she'll rock up with a pot plant and wine.
Oh my! Oh, come on. Yeah.
She'll take care of me in the sense that, she'll protect me.
Sure.
Younger as she is
Sure,
than me,
sure.
she'll make sure that she's like, I don't think you should do that. I don't think you should go there because X, Y, Z.
Yes.
I
actually thought she was much older than what I thought she is. She's a mama bear. She's a lioness around. It's beautiful.
Lioness. She's incredible. But our relationship goes beyond, it's a sisterhood.
Absolutely.
She's my little sister, I'm her big sister, but she's a little sister who takes care of me.
Of course.
And is sometimes a coach and the voice of wisdom.
Yes.
And the person who guides and
Yeah.
that's who she is. And so when I say I'm blessed with incredible people, I have a sisterhood of friends who show up for me and are generous with me in the most incredible way.
Amazing.
The last time I was on this podcast, I spoke about my husband,
Yeah.
who is really the kind of partner who has invested in me, who has shown up for me, who continues to show up for me, who guides me, who coaches me, who's my critic, who's my encourager, who's my best friend.
Sure.
I have incredible people, and it's a difficult question because I now have to think how that happened. And really, I would say maybe it's about being real, first of all, and authentic.
Right.
I'm a very authentic person.
Right.
So I don't know how to pretend.
Yes.
So it's interesting that I'm in politics. But maybe it's about that thing of at the time for things to be done differently.
To be authentic as leaders.
To be authentic as leaders. I really don't know how to pretend. So I'm very real. And I come as myself.
Yes.
Warts and all in the relationships that I'm in. I'm not perfect.
Yes.
But I am real. I'm authentic. I genuinely care about the people in my life and their well-being.
Right.
I care about where they end up.
Yeah.
And for me, I always try that no matter who you are in my life, and I guess it's just, a part of it's an instinctive thing in me. It could be part of my personality and my character.
Yeah.
But I want to know, Dumiso, where are you going with this? How does this feed into your purpose? Where does it go? How do I contribute to that?
Absolutely.
How do I contribute to where you end up?
Sure.
And that's the second thing. It's about genuinely caring. Whatever way that looks like for you, for me, that's how it's expressed. I care about people's purpose, people's life trajectories being fulfilled. I really care about that. And contributing to that in the way that they would like me to. And lastly, it's about being generous with yourself. It's about being generous. Be a giver.
Of yourself. Yeah.
Of yourself.
Yeah.
I'm generous with myself, sometimes to the frustration of the closest people to me. But I am generous with myself.
That's beautiful.
I love to give of myself.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful.
And so as a result, those things are consistent about me.
Yes.
And most of my relationships span over 20 years.
Yeah.
But I'm blessed, man. I'm blessed
awesome.
with the most incredible people.
Awesome. If someone wanted to change the caliber of their network or their social circle, to say, listen, I want to go in this direction of life, but I need a certain kind of people around me for whatever reason. What's your advice in penetrating those new circle? Because sometimes we get very intimidated by someone we see from afar, and I really wanna. It's not about exploiting them, but I really feel I can benefit from being within their, space. What can one do in this conversation of relationships?
Authenticity, man.
Right.
Authenticity. Just be real, even about that.
Yeah.
To say, Nobuntu, here's where I am in my life.
Sure.
And here's the kind of people I want to keep around me. And you really seem like one of those people. Because, often people do that in a way that's inauthentic.
Yeah.
And then, and you can see through it. And you're like,
you can feel it.
You can feel it. To know this one wants me. And then it's transactional. And if you're just real, if you just say, this is where I'm at, there's nothing that attracts people more than someone who's just real and just authentic.
Right.
Just be true and just be real. And also the good thing about that is if you get a rejection from that, you do so knowing, well, I came as myself. So I can't give anything more than myself.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Lastly, as I let you go, what are you reading right now, and what are you listening to in a form of a podcast? What are you reading? What are you listening to?
I haven't been listening. I mean, I the podcasts that I watch. I'm not listening. I watch podcasts.
Sure.
Are the ones that come up on my timeline.
Okay.
Your podcast comes up a lot on my
Oh,
timeline.
siyabonga bakithi. Siyabonga. In your face.
In my face. So there's so that's what I watch. So
Sure.
Usmiso. Now I'm not hiding her name anymore.
Yeah.
So I was trying to protect her. Usmiso, my assistant, diagnosed me with ADD.
Oh my. He's a doctor too. Hey, he's a superwoman, this one.
So my concentration.
Yeah.
So I read lots of books.
I see.
At the
once.
same time.
I do that too.
I listen to lots of things. So even a
Sure.
podcast, I'll just be honest with you. I'll
Yeah.
never watch one podcast of yours at the
Sure.
same time and finish the thing.
Yeah,
and it's not because it's not interesting.
Yeah.
It's because I'm
Good,
listening, good.
Yeah,
Then I'm listening to a lot of things at the same time. So that's a off-ramp.
Yes.
One of the things I said to her was, we've defined all these, we've given all these names and definitions and diagnoses to people who are different from the norm. But actually, a lot of those things are superpowers.
Yes.
So I've noticed that people who are like myself, who are either ADD or ADHD, actually what it is, I've identified for myself particularly, what it actually is capacity.
Yeah.
So I have capacity for a lot of things.
Good.
So I'm like, yeah, the world has called it ADD.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what it is for me. Is I have capacity.
Multitasking.
I'm a multi-potentialite, first of all.
Right.
So a multi-potentialite is somebody who's able to do a lot of things.
Yes.
And as a result, you have to be able to multitask and do all that.
Yes.
But you need capacity for that.
Yes.
So side note.
Yeah, goes.
Because you said you're somebody who's similar.
Yes.
It's capacity.
I get
You have
you.
the capacity for things.
Yes.
But yeah, so I listen to a number of podcasts, but it's
Yeah.
all over. Yours is one of them. I'm enjoying one that I was recently interviewed for, which is called Deepening Democracy and Women Who Rock. Because I was going to be on, I started listening. I was like, oh, these are good. And then I'm reading Barack Obama's book.
Right.
That's one book that I'm reading.
So intimidating. 700.
Listen, I'm also reading a book about
I can't wait for this one.
I'm reading a book about psychopaths in the workplace. Because apparently church and politics is where they are most effective.
Cool.
So
man, episode for another day.
So those are the books I'm
get
reading.
you. Yeah. You spoke of being generous with people, and you've certainly been generous with this podcast and my life. Thank you so much.
No,
I really appreciate you. I owe you mimosas. A brunch.
City
mimosas, city cheese board.
I'm here for that.
Come on.
I'm here for that.
I owe you that, so we're going to do that. And
Cool. I enjoy that.
I really appreciate the conversation. We've learned so much.
You're most welcome.
In a few months down the line, I will let you know what this has done
Wow.
for the podcast.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so
That's
when we look forward to what's going to happen in your own journey.
Yeah.
Keep on watching. And
I look forward to it too because I don't really know.
of course, it's just unfolding. It's just unfolding. Yeah, and yes, when you're in office, whatever God will open up for you, also not on this podcast.
Kanjani. So, you know, I have to tell you, I think I said the last time I was here that the space is so filling.
Thank you.
I found the space so filling for me, and I
Thank you.
think it's about the authenticity
Yes.
and about
Yes.
the ability to just be yourself in
Amen.
this space. So thank you for that.
Thank you so much. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being with us. That was Nobuntu Hlazo-Webster, Deputy Leader of BOSA, a author. Check out her books. They're awesome. She is a leader in society. She is a social activist, and she is going to be a significant player in the South African leadership landscape. So please look out for her and support her work so much. She is a friend of this podcast, and siyabonga kakhulu. Thank you so much. Like, subscribe, and do all the nice things. See you next time on the Unchristian Podcast. Thank you.